I was explaining Karen to my grandmother, and this was the only story I could think of to use as an example. I used to work retail. When I worked there, my manager and I would hide products when they were marked down for regulars that we liked. We had a regular who was this sweet older woman that I would totally adopt as my third grandma. We'll call her Gigi. I'd stopped in to chat with my former manager. While she was helping another customer, Gigi came in. I went to help her and talk to her. She was a retired teacher and liked to ask about my classes even though we taught very different ages. I'm checking hiding spaces for her and carrying her basket, so I kind of get where Karen is coming from. However, I'm wearing leggings and my school's homecoming shirt, so I'm not at all dressed appropriately. At this point though, we're done shopping, but manager is using the fact that I'm chatting with Gigi to continue helping the earlier customer, and I draw the line at getting behind the register for free. Karen must have seen me helping Gigi and that we were no longer moving around the store to come over to us and said, "Now that you're done with her, you can help me." This is where I had to explain to my grandma that what makes a Karen is entitlement. Even if I had worked there, I clearly hadn't rung Gigi's items yet when she demanded my attention. "I don't work here." "You were helping her?" "Yes, sir. I don't work here." "You obviously know your way around here, so just help me." At this point, I'm pretty sure that I looked at her, looked at myself, and then looked at manager. Presumably with the "what are you doing" expression generally reserved for my students. Now, with the superpower only elementary school teachers have, Gigi looked at Karen and sternly said, "Fairy tale doesn't work here. Manager does. Now stand over there and wait your turn." And Karen did. I decided it was time to leave, so I helped Gigi carry her stuff out after manager rung her up. Later I had to tell manager the rest of the story. Edit, thanks for the award. More of a "I'm a real person" rather than "I don't work here." This happened many years ago when my kids were still interested in stuff like museums. As one of the first UK areas settled by Vikings, York has a museum dedicated to their endeavours when populating this new land, Jorvik. There is one section that is a simple mirror maze used as a transition between two areas, but no artifacts to speak of. I had been separated from my wife and daughter, they got lost, so I found an alcove to wait for them in. As I stood there waiting, 6 foot, 18 stone, in a band t-shirt, jeans and red Reeboks, a group of middle-aged women walked past chatting to each other. One of them glanced at me and carried on. My wife and daughter were behind, and as I moved to join them, the woman that had looked at me, spun around, grabbed one of her friends, I can only imagine as a human shield, and after a second of realization commented that she thought I was a statue. Her panic still entertains me to this day. I work at a car dealership. We have a company policy where when someone wants to pay with a cashier's check, we have to accompany them at the bank to avoid fraud. So, for context, I work for a local tow truck company as the manager, and the roads outside our city up the hills are famous for being tricky and full of deadly turns to drive on. We are a busy company, especially during heavy rain periods where the roads are almost impossible to ride with cargo trucks. The owner of the company is a sweet old lady, and she does her best to help the truck drivers have the best time possible during this shitty situation. We let them buy coffee and snacks in the stops on us, and they are very grateful for it. The costs are honestly not too high, especially because our contracts are quite hefty due said roads plus the many other regular people who don't know better how drive there. Every week I go to the local truck stops to confirm how much we have to pay them all. I could do that by just a couple phone calls or messages, but if I have a chance to leave that office I'll take it in a heartbeat. The workloads can be downright cruel sometimes, so that's a good break for me, and the owner doesn't mind at all. I'm known there to be the person who pays for the truckers' coffee and food, and while I always tell that's the company paying for it, they are very grateful anyway, plus we treat them with dignity and respect they deserve, so that's another big plus. There was a day last year in the middle of summer, a big storm going on that swamped me with work. I had to help our 22 drivers to locate and retrieve people's cars, constantly receiving calls for help, so much so that dread noise stills hammer my head to this day. I had an assistant, but even so it was way too much for only 2 people to handle. We spent from 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. breaking our backs and minds that day, The road is even worse, so we had to work overnight. Then at 5 a.m. I was leaving home to rest and the owner said she could cover the weekly visit to the stops. I thanked her but told to not care about one stop in particular because it was on my way home. Our office is located some miles off our city. Once I arrive in my regular stop to get a most turned mountain of food and so much coffee it could thicken my blood. I was met by all the regulars, talked with everyone about the crazy storm and chit-chatting while my order was being done. It arrived and I was feasting on it. Then I hear a loud man yelling something in the lines of, "What do you mean you can't help me? This is your /job" to the cashier. I look back and tell to myself, what a crazy bastard. It was Roger, fake name. He keeps screaming with the cashier about something with the tires of his car, so I blocked the noise of my mind to finally eat my sustenance feed for an entire family. Then I hear a sharp and annoyed "Hey you" coming from behind me. I thought I was in the way of someone to catch one of the condiments. Close me, so I say my bad, push the basket with them aside and keep eating. Then I hear a loud stomp and someone, Roger, pulling me by my shoulder yelling at me, "Fire that awful employee immediately." I was still using my officer badge and clothes, so it is understandable Roger confused me with the manager, but I was just about over one of the most stressful days of my life and eating is sacred for me, so I simply released from his grip, turning back to my food saying, "Go fuck yourself." I could hear the cashier giggling and the owner, Bob, fake name, who happens to be behind the counter getting people's orders, giving a good loud laugh, then promptly telling I'm just a costumer and he's the one who runs business. Roger, is that how you run your business then? Letting rude lousy cashiers treat your costumes as garbage and your other costumers harass me without consequences? Bob looks at me and says, "I'm terribly sorry you have to go trough this up. I'll see the bad costumer out." Roger gives the biggest gasp I ever saw. "How dare you? You let your staff and costumers harass good people like this? I'm calling the police, and by the looks of your disgusting food I bet your kitchen is dirty with rats and cockroaches. I'm calling health surveillance too." I took great offense with this. I told him this food was 1,000 times better than whatever pigwash his wife does to him whenever she is not having sexual affair with others. Roger went into a bursting rage, treating to get physical with me and yelling some very ruder words to me. But something Roger didn't realize is the restaurant was also full of truckers who were watching their friends being harassed. Some got up to defend us, and while we were in the middle of the confusion I hear a rough, "Hey asshole, get the hell out of here," and when I look back there was these 3 angry guys, each one with mechanical tools on their hands and one with a fire axe, looking like they were ready to kill. My heart skipped a beat and I froze in place with the sight of the axe, and that seems to have convinced Roger too, because he started walking quite hastily outside yelling about calling the police. The truckers were behind him telling they would chop his limbs off if he ever comes back. Everything eventually went back to normal and Bob even let me get that meal for free for all that trouble. Thank you, Bob. The police arrived later. We explained everything that happened. They asked if Bob wanted to press charges and he simply said, "Don't worry sir, I don't think he is coming back." If I can get anything from this is, have the right friends everyone, and be kind with truckers, they're a crazy bunch. Some background. I am a RN. When I graduated it was unusual for men, especially young men, to be nurses. Being a RN plays into this tale. Over 20 years ago I was on a trip with my wife from Tampa to Orlando. On the way we passed an outlet mall where she saw signage for a shop specializing in bras. Made the comment that she could use a few new ones, so we stopped. She grabbed a few to try on. After trying them on she said that they didn't feel right. I went up to a very bored employee and borrowed her tape measure. When I returned to the outer room of the dressing room, I proceeded to use those skills I learned during my OB rotation about how to measure correctly for a bra. Paid very close attention during the lecture and lab. Discovered that my wife was wearing the wrong size. Of course I went off and found a number of bras in her size to try on, including daily, sports, and a sexy one or two. She was very vocal about telling me how much better these fit and felt. While I was standing there waiting, while still holding the tape measure, I was approached by a woman approximately mid-40s. Lady number 1, she very quietly asked if I would measure her, as she was thinking she was wearing the wrong size. Asked a few questions and learned that she was having back and shoulder pain as well. Had her step into the dressing room, and when she was ready keep her back to me. With replacing the tape I obtained measurements, and off I went. Measurements did not correspond to the size she was wearing. A few minutes later I returned with about a dozen different styles in her size. She was also very vocal in the fact they fit and felt better. By this time my wife was dressed and ready to head to the checkout. As we headed towards the checkout I was stopped by another woman, lady number 2, with questions about which bra type would be better for her. After a brief discussion she walked away to go look. We finally get to the counter to check out, and lady number 1 arrived right behind us. The look on her face when I handed back the tape measure was priceless. She stuttered, "Don't you work here?" At the same time lady number 2 walked up. Both of their jaws hit the floor when I responded that I didn't. The look on the employee's face was one of confusion. Not another word was said as we finished paying and left. As I was getting in the car looked back in the store. Both women were still staring like deer in the headlights. My wife and I still laugh about it. Edit: since it's been suggested that I was mistaken for an employee, I was wearing shorts, a tank top and flip-flops. No way did I look at all professional. Hello. This happened to me last semester at the Walmart by my college campus, and it's not really juicy but it ended on a wholesome note, with both parties laughing about it. My mom was with me. She likes to take me to Walmart for groceries when she drops me off at the beginning of my semesters and after breaks and stuff. I buy my own groceries throughout the rest of the semester, and I was wearing a black hoodie with a werewolf design on the front with some blues behind it that kind of resembled Walmart colors, and I was wearing a lanyard with my student ID, campus house and P.O. box keys and such, which is probably didn't help. Me and my mom were looking for acne spots for me, and I had wandered away from her, when I heard someone by me say, "Excuse me." I turned around and saw a kind-looking older gentleman, who asked me where he would be able to find such and such item. I can't exactly remember what he was looking for. I wasn't really familiar with it, and I tried to think of where it would be. But I came up with nothing, and said, "I'm not sure." Before calling to my mom, who was walking over towards us, because I figured she would know better. I hear the guy go, "Oh." Like he made a realization and he chuckled sheepishly and said, "I thought you worked here." The three of us laughed about it, and my mom pointed him in the right direction, and we went on our way. I saw him on our way out and waved before heading back to my house on campus. He was really nice about it, and I'm kind of glad that's the only "I don't work here" lady story. I know my mom has had a few similar stories before. Sorry it's not too exciting. Edited to fix spelling mistakes.